Three.
Thank you for the great intro, and thanks for having
thank
us.
you.
How's everybody doing this morning? Yeah. All right. It's a great, cozy day. So yeah, once again, thanks for having us. I recognize so many faces from literally this morning. We were in tribal. From over the years of just like making people's coffees and connecting. So really today, it's been 10 years of entrepreneurship and deciding in which way to take this conversation today. We decided to go with two questions that we get asked the most, which is how did you get to Bishop Arts in Oak Cliff, and how did you get into what you're doing? And so the quote that came to mind for us was, there's many different renditions of this quote. Entrepreneurship is like jumping out of a plane and building a parachute on the way down. And so we really wanted to talk about figuring it out as you go and kind of what that looks like and how it applied to us. Most of you know us from Tribal or Written by the Seasons, in face, in person. We really started though 10 years ago as a cold pressed juice company. Hailey and I are both just entrepreneurs at heart, and we started working together early in our careers as every job that we had. We went everything from a radio station to managing a hospitality group. We're also married, so yeah, I lucked out there. My batting average is high, I guess. So anyways, so really we wanted to find a vehicle because we knew that we wanted to be entrepreneurs. It's just our core. It didn't matter what it was. And so it was, what is our vehicle going to be? And at the time in our lives, we just decided to make something happen. So we moved to Florida, of all places, and lived on the beach for a while, and we were constantly just scratching up ideas, figuring out what we're going to do. We got really into transparency of ingredients and what we were eating, and just a clean lifestyle. And that doesn't just mean what you're putting in your body, that also means who you're surrounding yourself with, who you're talking to, what you're listening to, you're reading, all of those sorts of things. As we're trying to figure out what we're going to do, we're working for this restaurant group, and hospitality really struck a nerve for us. I got my first job when I was 14 years old in a restaurant. I've been in and out of them, love it. One of my favorite things to do is host people. Grew up around grandma's table. Hailey's the same way. And so then it was, well, how are we going to do this? Where are we going to do this? What's it going to look like? And we really developed this lifestyle cafe idea, which is now what you know as Tribal and Bishop Arts. At the time we were living in Florida, and we wanted to do it in a larger market because where we lived was very tourist driven. And so we created a sex appeal list and a practicality list of cities, no joke, and we went and visited places. And it was in 2013, we visited Dallas, and we were with this guy that was connected from some people in Florida. His name was Don Miller, and he drove us around all these areas in Dallas, all the areas as you would expect, like Uptown, Highland Park, Plano, Lovers in Inwood. And he's like, this is where you guys want to be. And nothing really struck a nerve with us. And we were about to end the day. He was going to take us back to the airport. And he's like, there's one more place maybe we should go look at. And he drove down Bishop Avenue.
And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is what we've been waiting for. We for sure want to be in this neighborhood. And he looks at me and he's like, okay, really? And I was like, yeah, this is it. And he's like, it's a little premature. It could be 2 days. It could be 2 years. And I remember looking at him being like, 2 years? Because if you know us, well, if you know me, I'm not like the most patient. And I just remember we were kind of like, okay, well, this is it though. This is the neighborhood.
Yeah, and so then we moved to Dallas to open in Bishop Arts, and nothing happened. I mean, really, because that was in 2013. And so I think that we were just young and naive, and we thought that we could talk with people and let them know our passion, and hey, we can do this, like, we're good. And no one wanted to mess with us. They're like, who are you? You don't know anyone here. You have no network. You have no community. And that wasn't just in Oak Cliff. It was just talking with people in general. We didn't know anyone in Dallas. I think we were a little naive in that. And
yeah, we thought our passion for, our ideas and what we could do would really just like take us, open all these doors for the real estate, and that we learned very quickly. We're like, okay, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, so it was a full, what do we do? And one of the things, back to the quote of entrepreneurship, of building a parachute on the way down, is just the importance of adaptability and pivoting your business model. And at the time, in Florida, one of the restaurants we were working with that was kind of a guiding light for what we were going to do in Dallas, we were making tons of cold pressed juice, and that was going to be a big factor in Tribal and Bishop Arts. So we just said, let's just grassroots build a brand, and that was the introduction to Tribal Juice. And so, I mean, hand painted a sign, hit up every farmer's market that would possibly take us on. Got some friends and family to help us buy our first like industrial sized juicer so we could make large volumes. And we got into a farmer's market and took 26 juices. I remember we were scared to death that we were going to sell one juice bottle.
So nervous, very nervous. And then we sold out of our juices, our 26 juices. And I remember we were like high-fiving, like, there's hope, we can do this.
Yeah, and some of the people that bought juice that first farmer's market, it's so wild how the world works. As you guys all know, these stories start to interweave. And if you're aware of what's going on around you, like there's just little nuggets along the way of seeds that you've planted. I still have people that bought juice at this first farmer's market that now work for other companies that have taken Tribal to that company to sell. It's just wild.
So with this long left turn we took, we truly did piece it together. I mean, hand labeling, it was the hardest work we've ever done, the most laborious thing. I mean, we're not manufacturers. We became manufacturers. And it definitely, we laugh about it now, we can laugh, but it really, truly, looking back 10 years ago, it just took a different version of us that honestly, if you ask me, could you go and do it again right now? The answer would be no. I truly don't know how we did it. We were hand labeling every single bottle, shrink wrapping the bottles, getting burned. That didn't last long.
Yeah, at one point you had a heat gun every bottle. I'm like,
we're like, this isn't working. So we went back to the stickers. And then we're hand capping, we're hand juicing. It's Brent and I, and then my cousin decided she would volunteer for free. I don't know why, but thank you, Julianne. And our days would look like we're getting up at 4 a.m., we're picking up the produce, we're taking it, we're going to juice it, we're producing it, we're hand labeling it, capping it, and then we're just trying to sell out of those juices that day. And that was on repeat.
Well, I think the same naivety of trying to find a space, it was the same thing that led to this. It was like, oh, we can make juice and sell it. And then it was like all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're a distributor, you're a manufacturer, you're a sales team. And you're wearing all these different hats, and things cost money, obviously, and it goes fast, and the cash flow doesn't necessarily work out. And so it just became a huge grind. And I did want to mention, though, that I think it's important if you're wanting to start something, or if you want to be an entrepreneur. I know a lot of creatives are in this room. I can't emphasize enough, like, planting seeds. Like, even whenever before we had the juice company, just get over yourself. Just say you have a juice company, because that's what led to us finding a space to house our juicing machine, which is on this next slide at the bottom right. Literally, her sister was getting married, and the caterer, and you can speak more to this, we're just, what do you guys do? We're really just waiting tables at restaurants. But, oh yeah, we've got this juice company. Oh no, wait, where do you make it? Well, we're looking for a place. Turns out the caterer at her wedding, he's like, hey, I'll give you a 6x6 area in my catering kitchen for free. And so those kind of like seeds getting planted, just telling someone what you're doing, people are usually typically willing to help. And I think it's something that you can't take serious enough. It just really helps. Our kind of grassroots marketing plan internally was, we wanted to be a part of your tribe. Hailey's a Chickasaw Nation citizen, and so that name kind of came in with that, and we really wanted to build a community. And we kept writing down a tribe that doesn't look tribal, and that was kind of our goal as we went to markets and tried to connect with people. I mean, a typical day back then was like, we were hitting 10 to 20 events within like a 3-day span. I mean, we'd be at your Pilates in your morning, and we'd be at farmer's market, and then we'd be somewhere in the evening. It was just nonstop go, 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 and then trying to land any kind of store account that we could. And for us, this was a huge pivot because we're used to retail face-to-face, and so you don't really know how to go into a store and sell your product. What do you price it at? What margin do you do? You can go to Google, you can find all sorts of different things, but it really is just a figuring it out as you go, back to building the parachute thought process.
Not to mention the manufacturing side of it. I became HACCP certified. You have to do a lot of, just on the operational side of things, there's a lot to unpack there, but to his point, we would just put our heads together, talk through it, make it happen. But we just kept knocking on doors. We kept trying to, and I think we tell our staff that a lot every single day. Everybody wants to know, hey, how can I get here? And our big theme is planting seeds of like being awake today will truly, and this is coming from somebody that wants it yesterday. And it's like being awake today and the opportunities and the doors open that you walk through. I mean, they really will flourish in the future. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but I think that that's like our big theme, as you'll see when we keep.
Yeah, I think that intent awareness of what you're trying to do. People use the word intentional a lot with like a high level of like passion and emotion. It just unlocks opportunities, and then you start to see the path unfold, and you're like, oh, this is what's happening. I do want to say a funny story though, because she's a great salesperson. I'm terrible.
Thank you.
And we probably wouldn't have any accounts if it wasn't for Hailey. And we got our first we got our first store, which shout out to Green Grocer for giving us a spot. They no longer exist, but as our first store, and then we're like, okay, we feel real, and then we can go to this store and tell them that we have a store. We land this place called Fresh Market, and they had just moved from the East Coast to Dallas. They no longer exist, and so we're about to deliver. We're getting all geared up. Yay, we got a real store. And they're like, hey, you have to turn in your paperwork for your NSF audit. NSF audit?
I'm like, no problem.
What's that? So it's like, Google, what's an NSF audit? And then it's like, what are we gonna do? And we're calling back like, yeah, you can't sell in our store without an NSF audit, and this much insurance and this. And we're like, oh man, this isn't like selling to the mom and pop. So then it was like, call the NSF. Once again, we're just building a parachute. Call the NSF. Hey, this is what we got going on. Okay, we can come out there. It's gonna cost this much, but we can come out there. Okay, great. So then you get audited by the NSF. Then you wanna get certified organic. And to what she's saying about that awareness, that NSF audit made us be able to pass our USDA audit. And then once we got big enough, the FDA showed up at our door. Now they're gonna audit us. And
that's not fun.
That's scary when that happens, because you're like, oh, how do I get through this? This is the FDA. They can shut down all my hard work, my business. But those little moments of like going through that process of not being like, I don't know what an NSF audit is. I can't do that. You just break down the door, so to speak. I love this picture on the bottom left. That's Sabino and Rosanna, two of my first employees, with some freshly washed juice bags in my Honda Element. Hailey's cousin with some bottles. We thought that bottom right juice order was huge. Whoa, it's like half a pallet. And so, yeah, that was a day in the life travel too. I mean, we would get there sometimes 3:30, 4 a.m. We're juicing until 9 p.m. Those days were very exhaustive and very unhealthy. I definitely don't recommend doing that if you're an entrepreneur. And it was like do whatever. Contact started to unfold, and all of a sudden we're getting calls from like the Omni downtown, and their chef's like, hey, can you do 500 gallons of juice? And you're like, well, sure. When do you need it by? Wednesday. It's Monday at 5 o'clock. What are you gonna say? I mean, you say yeah, and you do it, because you want to be the guy they call the next time. And it's, like I said, it's not good for your health, it's not good for your psyche, but whatever.
Here we are.
But yeah, that was the day. So used to pick up Sabino and Rosanna every day because they didn't have transportation. Those are honestly, I know everybody says this, I don't miss the grind of it, but man, there is something special about when you first start something, and you can experience it when you're in it, like it feels great. But truly, when you look back on it, you're like, man, those times were the best freaking times. We had so much fun. You can go to the next one. So this is just another picture really showing kind of what we were doing, and we really wanted to get out in the community and make connections. I mean, we were everywhere. We were in this building numerous times. It was nonstop.
Yeah, demos, sales runs, and then segueing into, Brent and I were both collegiate athletes. And my dad was a football coach most of my life. And so we both share a passion of getting just nutrient dense or high quality products into sports facilities. That was like a big kind of like, behind the scenes goal, but it was definitely like in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna make this happen on the side. And so I just start calling all of these, any kind of university number I could find, and just digging around for, their nutritionists or strength coaches. And my dad had a couple of connections, but those were kind of dead ends because, you can't talk about your brand. And so anyway, I land this meeting at TCU with a dietitian, and we're so pumped. We're getting prepared. We made a special purple cabbage juice. I'm like ready, like let's go nail this.
Easy.
We walk in, we sit down, we pitch it. I'm feeling good, and the nutritionist says,
She literally, this is like a teen movie. She goes, "This is a terrible idea. This is so dumb. You should go get an effing job." She said her actual word.
literally. And so Brent and I,
A simple no would have sufficed.
yeah, we're like, Brent and I handled that a little bit differently. I'm super down. I'm treating that like it was like the biggest loss ever. I'm like, wow, what like a momentum breaker. I mean,
I'm geeked up.
Yeah, he's like, are you kidding me? We're gonna go and show her that we can do this. So he's not wrong. I get in touch with Coach True at the time with SMU, and he was super progressive, and he wanted to talk about, he wants tart cherry, carrot, beet, apple juice. And so I look at Brent, and you're like, oh, we can make that juice.
We can make that juice, and those. It was serendipitous because whenever he said those ingredients, I've been making so much juice, and we've been making a lot of juice for restaurants, and they want certain colors for mocktails and cocktails. I was like, oh no, we can make SMU red. I remember looking at Coach True, I was like, we can make SMU red. And so then.
So we went and did a tasting, blew their minds. They loved it. All of the coaches, the athletic department, the strength department, they were so pumped, and we were too. It was a huge, huge moment for us in our momentum.
That's like the first batch ever of what is now Pony Ride. Back then it was Pony Up. You can go to the next one. It was a really clean looking juice and a really clean looking product. Loved it. So once again, learning as you go, right? Hailey had mentioned we had some other hits with some other universities because we were calling and reaching out, and they'd say, hey, yeah, like our wrestling team would love beat shots, or our football team would love beat shots. You can't talk about it. And so we're like, well,
you can't talk about your brand.
Right? Like, why are we doing it then? And so then with SMU, we learned this whole different world that I didn't know existed. It's like, oh, we want you to be the official cold pressed juice of SMU. And it's like, oh, that's great. And they're like, oh yeah, hey, we got to call Coca-Cola because they have a cold pressed juice in their contract. And we're like, what? Coca-Cola? And so it was a whole nother avenue and journey of just learning something that you really had no idea what you were doing and dealing with it, and how do you negotiate that, and when they're asking for free product that you don't really have a budget for, is it worth it? And you gotta figure that out for yourself and believe it. For us, we were like, yeah, this is huge, let's do it. And then at the bottom right there, SMU was like, let's blow you guys out. They gave us this awesome airship container, and at the time, SMU was pretty good at football. Baylor was coming to town, they were good at football, and a lot of people were there, there was a lot of environment. We were making tequila drinks with a tequila company with the cold pressed juice. If you don't mix our juice with liquor, you should. And so anyways, that day, the Central Market buyer from HEB happened to be at the tailgate, and it worked.
It worked. It was huge jump, and I guess a huge chapter for us because we did give a lot for this partnership, but just developing this relationship with the buyer at the time.
Oh, sorry.
At the time, we got into Central Market and we launched across Texas. So it was a huge distribution channel for us that the Pony Up, now Pony Ride, got us.
Yeah, it was awesome. So then that day, and I'm not making this up, back to the original intro of Don Miller, the guy that drove us around Dallas talking about, he specifically said 2 years. And it wasn't quite 2 years to the date, but I was driving our delivery van with all the booze and juice to the tailgate, and my phone rings, and I'm like, Don Miller. And I answered, I'm like, hey, Don, I haven't talked to you in a long time. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, well, I've got this juice company, we're launching it, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I found your place in Bishop Arts. And so it was like, oh, no way. And at this time, we're still wanting to open our cafe, but this is taking so much energy. Once again, it's another fork in the road. It's like, hey, you asked for this opportunity. It's now coming back to you. What do you do? And how do you make it happen? Because we really had no business trying to make it happen. So then, oh yeah, so this is a great picture. So,
Segue.
yeah, I before I segue to tribal, a lot of you probably know Rosemary. Rosemary's been with us for 7 years, and we have a lot of serendipitous moments in our story. I think they're important to call attention to because everybody out here has these deep moments that they're really important to you. And maybe when you tell them to other people, you sound like a crazy person. But Rosemary's an example of that for us. So we had decided we're opening Tribal and Bishop Arts. We signed the lease. By the way, the reason why we got the meeting was the guy who built our building over there was buying our juice at Royal Blue. So it all worked out. It was crazy. Anywho, Hailey's like, hey, we need a chef. And at Tribal. And I'm like, we don't need a chef. We don't got money to make a chef. We can't pay rent. Like we're not hiring a chef. You are the chef. And I'm saying that she's the chef because this is Hailey in culinary school in LA. Okay, so this is at Matthew Kinney's culinary school in LA. And we didn't know this at the time. This is circa 2014. Well, Rosemary at the time was working at this culinary school's restaurant called Makeout. And so we go to interview this girl, and she has Makeout on her resume, which I'm kind of morally opposed to Makeout and Matthew Kinney anyways. But, sorry, I don't know if you know him in the culinary world, but so, anyone seen Bad Vegan on Netflix? So anyways, so she's out there doing this. Lo and behold, we're interviewing this girl down in Lower Greenville that's in her resume.
And I'm like, this is our girl. She walks in with purple glitter Doc Martens on. Her hair's braided.
Pitbull pins.
We're like, she's perfect.
Yeah, and I'm like sitting there, I'm trying to like find a reason not to hire her. I'm like, okay. So we leave, she calls me, she's like, what do you think? I was like, yeah, I don't know how we don't hire that girl. So we hire Rosemary, and then years later after Tribal had opened, this is from Rosemary's computer.
Rosemary
It's
came
wild.
in.
She was there the day of her final project and took a picture of her. Nobody knew.
It's wild. It's wild. But thank you, Rose.
Really cool moment. So then this is when Tribal started. As you can see, Lower Union's still a house. I definitely think, once again, to the naivety, like we would go down there and be like, oh, this is where we're going to be. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, is anybody else going to be here? And we weren't smart enough to ask like about tenant nicks and all the real estate terms that people throw around. And so, yeah, I'm shocked we made it.
Or pushing our opening date. We definitely were opening during construction. Brent's like walking outside past the drilling and stuff, being like, hey, we're open, you can come in, trying to get customers. But we stood through that and got through it.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone that helped us get through it, because it really was like everyday building. And back to the pivoting thing, like we really thought that grab and go was going to be a big part. I mean, a lot of you may remember when Tribal first opened, we would do like these juice growlers every day, different juice every day. It wasn't happening. I mean, like it was not happening. Like people weren't really drawn to it. And we had this like long-term plan to turn Tribal into more of like a Manhattan, like Soho kind of cafe where everybody's on top of each other and it's all day and people are meeting up. And this community was perfect because it fit our plan out the gate. It was within like 6 months. We were like, we're killing the to-go fridge. We're putting in more tables. This isn't working out. Like everybody wants what we wanted to get to down the road. And so it was just the perfect community, the perfect time, the perfect group of people. And it really is a strong community. And community was always what we pushed, and trying to make those real interactions at pop-ups and also in person of just talking to guests, remembering guest names, orders, and hospitality. It's not my quote, but it's not a transaction. And we really try to preach that with our staff. And so, yeah, if you ever have a bad experience, let us know because we want to fix that. So, yeah, that's Tribal. And then more of Tribal. That's kind of what it looks like today.
Well, and this is, I don't know, around 2019. We're really catching momentum. We feel really good about our growth, our team. We're having to hire more. We're getting reached out to about expansion. We are feeling really, really good. And then COVID happened.
Yeah, and this is our 2-year team. This is January of 2020, right before COVID happened. Great squad. If you ever go to Houndstooth, there's Damien right there, far left. Sylvan, shout out to Damien. Anyways, that was a really strong crew, and it was really hard to blow up everything because we had no choice. But I will say, back to pivoting and building that parachute, I don't really follow the news, but at this point in time, we were definitely following the news and like, hey, something's happening. And we were looking at the coast, and the three of us just met and were like, hey, we're going to turn Tribal into a market. And we decided that in February. And so we were a little ahead of the lockdown situation. And that's really just because we were looking at the coastlines. We thought it was inevitable that it was going to happen. And so whenever COVID hit, it was just lock and load. They did a great job of converting everything online. And once again, these opportunities of just being awake and aware. I remember we're sitting there the second day of lockdown, and we're sitting there like, are we gonna get a call? Hey, okay, cool, coffee to go, yeah. And then all of a sudden, hey, how's it going? This is Abby, I work at the Dallas Mavericks. Oh, okay. Hey, can you guys feed all the COVID sites? here we are at like that Omni conversation again. Yeah, sure, we can feed all the COVID sites. Okay, well, it's going to be a bunch of food. Like, I'm like, hey, we can do this, right? Rose is like, I mean, I don't know. Our kids are so small. I mean, tribal's like 800 square foot. So, anywho, we do that, and that was just one of those things that it comes along your way, and you're prepared, and you do it. And props to those kind of organizations for doing that with many businesses, not just us.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go back to that last photo. That photo on the right. That photo on the right. Everybody needs a rosemary in their life.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a rosemary. I pray everybody has a rosemary.
Yeah, you can go to the next one. Just more photos. The picture on the right is local. That's a local Oak Cliff church. We had so many neighborhood people reached out during that time. And I can't tell you, too, how many people, they converted like their entire grocery to us, and it kept us afloat. I mean, just spending hundreds of dollars on eggs and milk and just random things. So really big shout out to the community.
Definitely. I feel like the community, and I'm sure, like you've said, so many people in here could probably relate to this, but even in such like a dark, like everybody knows 2020, like, but it really did show just like the strength of our community and the reason why, you know, when we turned on that street in 2013 or 14, we were like, oh, this is where we want to be. Just because, I mean, it's there in the community.
So in 2019, right before COVID, we had you can go to the next one. We were trying to grow tribal, just to rewind a little bit, and it wasn't really like moving at the right pace. And then COVID happened. Well, in 2019, Exir asked us, hey, like, you've done a great concept. You're one of the originators. Our favorite building in the project. If you want it, it's yours. And that's what now is Written by the Seasons. And so we had plenty of different concepts we wanted to do. Hailey's incredible with brand names, and she came up with Written by the Seasons.
Thank you.
And it was just like, oh, that's such a great restaurant name. Despite everyone I talked to telling me that's a stupid restaurant name. It is an incredible restaurant name. And so, anywho, he asked us, do this. And in the middle of COVID, we were going, let's just zag while everyone's zigging. Let's call him and let's do that dinner concept. So we called him and said, hey, we'll take the space. That was in the middle of all those pictures. And this picture is really important because this is kind of a serendipitous moment. That's Chef Dennis on the far right, and that's Chef Mel. Those are the Written by the Seasons chefs. And so Dennis used to come and buy juice for me, him and his family, at the farmer's market at a Green Spot over in East Dallas. Every week he comes, and he'd always wear a Patriots hat or a Patriots shirt. And so one day he's walking by, and I'm just like, hey, go Pats. And he's like, you a Boston fan? You from Boston? I was like, no, I like greatness though. And he's like, haha. So we start shooting the breeze, talking about the Patriots. And then he's like, I go, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm a chef. And I was like, okay, where at? And he tells me they just moved from LA to open a restaurant. So I go out, I try his food. Next time I see him, I'm like, hey man, that hot sauce I had was incredible. Can you just bring me hot sauce and trade me juice from here on out? It's the Thai chili hot sauce at Written, if you've ever had it. And he's like, yeah, sure. So we start trading juice, whatever. Then I look at him and I go, hey, we're going to open a restaurant together one day. I swear he looked at me like I was from Mars. Like, what? I just moved from LA. Like, what are you talking about? I didn't even have a restaurant. Anyways, point of the story is at their restaurant they were at, we did a lot of like cold pressed cocktail infusions and like preset menus of pairing with food and a couple events with them. Really stoked that connection. And we always talked about doing something. So then when we got the opportunity for Written, I called him. I was like, hey, here we go. It's go time. And that was it. And then Written by the Seasons launched.
Written by the Seasons. So if you've been there, thank you. Thank you. So the name Written by the Seasons is not only celebrating the seasons of food, but the seasons of life. The photography on the walls and in the restrooms there's just a story behind each one of them. It's either photos that we've personally taken or photos of family members. And so that's really behind the brand there. So yeah, Written.
More Written, that's Felipe on the left, who's been with us since the opening. One thing I want to touch on that I think is really important if you're in hospitality, and I hear this all the time, is staff retention and how hard it is. And I know it's hard, but if you can put emphasis on it, it's really worth it. I mean, Rosemary's been with us for 7 years, Dennis and Mel 5, Felipe 5. We've got probably like 10 more staff members that are 2 years plus. And that really allows for you to, make sure that your message is clear. And then when a couple of staff members leave, that they can still hold that bond together. So that's something that I think is really worth all of the effort in the world, is staff retention and having conversation with your staff and understanding what you can do better as an entrepreneur.
And to tie back too, I feel like just going back to the seed planting and just every day being awake and aware of what's happening in your life. I think that a lot of we use a lot of the team mentality with our team.
We're not shy of sports analogies.
Yeah. And so I think like all of those experiences though, it is really wild sometimes whenever I step back and look at it. We're like closing out the huddle before in pre-shift and all of that. And I feel like that's just adapting to whatever your style is, but leaning into that. And I think that, we do a good job of that.
Yeah, well, the sports analogies really hit. I knew it really finally hit whenever Rosemary comes into the office one day. She's like, hey, have you watched that new Belichick-Saban documentary? Just more photos of the space, just to get the look and the feel. We're totally down to do a Q&A if you want. If you don't, get it.
Well, I was gonna say that we're gonna talk about our future of what's happening now.
Oh yeah. There's a future.
This is how he ends meetings abruptly. Okay, so we are very excited. I feel like it actually hasn't been public, but we're opening another Written by the Seasons. Probably, I hesitate to say a specific, but at the end of this year in Uptown that we're super excited about, in the Quadrangle. So excited about that for Written number 2. And then we're actually opening another Written by the Seasons in Arkansas, Bentonville, Arkansas, it will be in 2025. Brent and I both grew up in Fayetteville, Arkansas, so that's a whole other story.
Whole other story
of
of how we ended up there.
But we're excited about that.
Yeah, and also, so we're really excited. We don't know what is going to come of it, but Monday we got invited to the Michelin ceremony. So we haven't made that public, but we're really excited. So we'll be in Houston at that. So
send good vibes.
It's the first public that we've said that. So yeah. So hopefully it means something. We'll see.
And now, like you said, if you thank you so much for listening to us and our story. It was really hard trying to summarize. We're like, wow, like talking about 10 years is kind of hard to be able to make it all make sense for everybody. But we appreciate being asked to do this, and our partnership with you all is so amazing. And we just thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah, for sure.
Couple of Q&A question time. Does anyone have a question? Starts off.
First, I don't need a mic. I'm always accused of speaking too loud anyway. I was born and raised in Europe, so I've spent half my life there and then my other half here. And I'm a big fan of your restaurant because what I appreciate is the seasonality of what you're serving. Because it seems that in this country you can get everything at any time, and it doesn't mean it's good. It just means it's available. And my question really is, how do you ensure that you sort of constantly have sustainably and responsibly sourced ingredients for your restaurant that also sort of stick with the seasons? Because I'm always excited when you put out your new menu, because I'm like, okay, what's going to be on there? So my question is really, how do you manage to do all of that? Because that takes a lot of extra kind of effort.
Yes.
Where are you from?
Germany.
Oh,
That's
you
amazing.
asked the great question about buying your meat in Skies. You see the baby cow. That was you, yeah.
Yes.
It's a great question. Speaking of the name, sometimes our chefs are like, oh, because we want to do Written by the Seasons and we want to change it, but in Texas it's really hard sometimes. And so how we do bridge that is the chefs are they're really, really good. Like Brent said, they're a husband-wife team of taking creativity, but also being realistic. And it was happening this year. We really weren't ready to launch fall, and so we don't, so we'll push it. Or if there is something coming into season, our chefs will make us aware, and we'll do it fall, but we won't. We've been launching our menus as the seasons are here. So again, like I think the best example is just recently our fall menu just fully launched because it wasn't ready, but it says fall, it's like, oh, it's not there yet. So we change the seasonality when we can, but we definitely don't force it.
Yeah, and I'll say too, because you've lived in Europe, and I totally get the food scene in Europe, Jan. I totally understand everything you're saying. And Dennis and Mel have been all over the world, so they understand that too, and most of their time was spent in LA. And so for them, it's a completely different, just environment in California, and Mel's a big stint in Spain. And so they try to stick to those roots because they know it's important to the overall concept. And so I think to Hailey's point of just, if the squash isn't ready, squash down and don't put it on the menu, which can be a printing nightmare, but yeah.
Working
just
through
a commitment.
No, but I think it impacts flavor so much.
Yes.
I just bought some kiwis because I love them, and they're not getting ripe anymore. And they're sitting in my kitchen, and they're going from hard to having to throw them away. And I'm like, why was I that stupid to even buy them and think this was a good idea? And so what I always appreciate is when I eat at your restaurant is that it seems like the ingredients are just at the right point of having the right flavor at the right time. And I'm wondering if you've thought about actually like maybe creating some little teaching or seminars or something around that too.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I definitely think that there's something there to that because that moment you just described with the kiwis, it still happens on our side too. We have these great ideas of what, is going to be in this dish. And then our chef comes and tells me, hey, they're not ready.
Rhubarb.
So I think that's a great thought though. Thank you for sharing that. I'll definitely pass that to our chefs. You never know.
Yeah, it's a great
Say bye.
idea. And we have thought about it in the past. I think executing it is a different thing for us. But yeah, it's nice to know the interest.
I did that when I still lived back there, that some restaurants actually would create like 3-day seminars where you would go and you'd create a menu together on a Friday, you'd cook on Saturday, have a little bit, and on Sunday you'd have a fabulous meal with a, sommelier that would then help pair the wines with the food and all that kind of stuff. But you walked away and you learned so much about food.
I love that.
It's a great idea.
Noted.
And noted. Yeah, it's nice to know there's a community that wants that.
Other questions? Yes.
So Rhythm by the Seasons is like one of, every time I go, like it's some of the best food in the city. It's
Thank
so
you.
great. But I think like even more than that, what elevates it is the like top-down hospitality. So like you guys are very warm, and I know you from Rockspace and whatever, so like expect friendly interaction from you from the hostess to who like brings my cocktail from the bar. Everything is incredible. So like can you talk about top-down hospitality? Because you guys are warm, but it's not always like easy to get other people to buy into that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's definitely music to our ears. I'll let you take this one. I definitely give him the credit of operational standards and the hospitality.
Yeah, I think, by the way, your comment means a lot because it's really important to me. I mean, I think food can go from tasting really great to really bad with bad service, and mediocre food can taste a lot better with really good service. And, I think that we put it, like, back to the staff retention thing, we put a lot of emphasis on being a person and actually talking with people as opposed to, learning the menu, which is obviously in our repertoire too, but like, the first thing in our manual is take care of yourself. And then you can take care of the guests, and then you can take care of the community. And we sit down with every hire, and that's like the first thing you go over. You say, hey, read this paragraph. Well, what's important about this paragraph? Take care of the community. No, take care of yourself. And that's not from an egotistical way. It's just saying, hey, you can't, if you're coming in wrecked mentally or emotionally, you can't take care of the guests. You can't give good hospitality. And so I think that grounded awareness of where you are, that, hey, you're at work right now, and really just making that your company culture. And don't get me wrong, it is very hard to get staff to buy into it. And you got to wake them up. You got to be like, hey, no, I know your problems. I get it. I got them too. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about your problems. Now how we feel. And then you just, all of a sudden people get this freedom to like really make interactions. And Rosemary, I can't remember when you quoted this the other day, but making space for magic. We say that a lot for the staff of just like allow the interaction to unfold. And so yeah, I mean, yeah.
And you can't do that if you're walking around asleep. And that's a lot of our big theme, especially to some of our young staff, you know, it is hard every day to come in awake, alive, aware. So that's a big theme of just making space for magic, but being awake to even be able to see that magic. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah, and I think one more thing is I think making sure that you get, it's a two-way street, right? And I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs or restaurants for sure, because I've worked in so many of them. I mean, it's terrible. I can give you so many stories. And so it was like, hey, I want to create a culture where that doesn't exist. And so a lot of that is, if you get a job at Written by the Seasons, one of the first things we want to know at Tribal is, hey, what do you want to do? Why are you here? Are you trying to save for a new car? Are you trying to get into hospitality? Are you just hard up for luck and need to pay bills? All those three things really have a different path. And I think getting that person on that path is really important. And then over time, the staff, it just spreads. No different than a cancer spreads on the negative side, the positive spreads, and then it becomes the fish in water, and the other fish is like, hey, how's the water? And he's like, what water?
That's awesome. We got time for 2 more questions. Yeah.
So I also love both restaurants. I'm like compromised, so sometimes it's hard to find options, and it feels like this oasis for like safe, good for you food.
Thank you.
So it's really great. And I guess my question is around the design side and design and marketing. Like how do you decide how much to lean into the health aspect versus trying to appeal to broader audiences with, you know, all the little things it is that you design, whether it's like bottles, labels, your brand, like how do you think about that? What's your approach?
We're yin and yang, but I'll let her talk about it.
You start, I feel like.
Well, I think that like, thank you so much for your compliments.
Yes, thank you.
So I think that if we could, and I understand there's a lot of immune compromises and a lot of dietary restrictions and allergens that people have, but it's always been interesting to me when people use the term eating healthy, just because that's relative to different people. And I think, you know, for me, it's really transparency of ingredients and what's in your food, because eating is like breathing. Eating is healthy. Like, we have to have food to sustain ourselves. But we've just adulterated this narrative of healthy eating versus non-healthy eating, and then there's 50 different views of what is healthy. And so I think of finding out what works for you is really important. But I think from an advertising perspective, when we got in the cold pressed juice market, at the time I was drinking lots of vodka and tequila with cold pressed juice. Why? Because it made me feel good. Like, I didn't wake up hungover. I was like, this is great. I'm not giving up drinking. I love it. So this is awesome, right? And so of being in tune with your own body, like, I feel better when I drink this way, and then being like, hey, we can market that because everybody else is using cold pressed juice as this medicinal doctor. And it's like, I drink it because it makes me feel great, not because I don't need to go to the doctor now. And so I think that's kind of where I bring that side to it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. It definitely makes me think of when we got certified USDA, and I'll keep this short, but you know, we were going to so many farmers markets, and these farmers were wanting to give us their cucumbers and their romaine, and we were doing that. And then we got certified USDA, and then we couldn't support this local farmer anymore because they couldn't afford it. But they were organic to my standard, and so I think, you know, deciding how you're going to go about keeping the transparency of ingredients and quality ingredients, but also like which are you sacrificing? You know, it's tough. It really is tough, but. I think we've come a long way, and like you said, we definitely wanted to take not the sterile, like, oh my gosh, you step into a juice bar and it's like, I can't get out of here fast enough. We want our branding to be playful, especially with Tribal. We want you to be able to take it on your athletic journey, or if you want to shake, cheers it, like it says on the bottle. So I hope we're answering your question, but it's definitely still like a work in progress.
Yeah, I think as a society as a whole, we need to stop segmenting things so much. Like, you can be healthy and, you know, have a drink with your friends. Like, you can do all these things. I think that's the heart of it.
Nice. Last question. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
How do you guys take care of yourselves?
That's a good question. So we definitely are big cold plungers, sauna, big breathers, meditating.
Yeah, breathwork's huge.
Breathwork. And then we have recently, within the last like year and a half, picked up pickleball. We're actually playing in the Nationals tournament this weekend, which is like so we definitely have used pickleball as, I feel like, because we both were collegiate athletes, like I feel like it's been such a good, I'm not gonna go play like full court basketball right now. And so it's been like a good sport to be able to have a hobby and an outlet to, sometimes, usually we don't fight on the court. I feel like we're pretty good mixed couple. Like usually we walk away, we're like, that was a stress reliever. So I feel like that's been like a big, big godsend for us personally.
Yeah, and I think, not to just overuse the word awareness, but being aware of when you're not taking care of yourself, which definitely been guilty of that a lot, and then kind of reeling it back in whatever way you're not taking care of yourself, and just being honest with yourself.
Y'all, give it up for Brenton.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Real quick, I know you're